Welcome back to the road to City Hall. When he was running for mayor 4 years ago, Bill de Blasio pledged to create and preserve hundreds of thousands of affordable apartments for New Yorkers who are suffering from a housing crunch. Now, as he seeks his second term, the mayor is still facing pressure to help long-term residents from being priced out of their neighborhoods while also keeping real estate developers in check. On Monday, though, thousands of people rallied outside of City Hall to demand that the mayor live up to his word and create more housing for the city's neediest tenants, especially senior citizens and low-income New Yorkers. Joining me now to give the de Blasio administration's position on these issues are Maria Torres-Springer. She's the commissioner of the city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Also with us is Shola Olatoye, the chair of the New York City Housing Authority. Thank you both for being here. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And I guess, you know, in some ways, this was bound to happen, and this is just one inflection point of a larger conversation that I know you've been having with people in neighborhoods all around the city. What are your main objections to the plan that the Metro Iaf folks put out? I mean, the rally on the steps of City Hall was backed by a very specific plan, and my understanding is you're not all that thrilled with it.
So let me start by saying that we in the administration share so much of the same goals as Metro Iaf. We believe in their mission. We believe in the urgency in which they're doing their work. And in fact, over the course of the last few decades, we've worked with them very, very collaboratively to build thousands of units of affordable housing in neighborhoods across the city. And in particular, if you look at what they said during the rally, or if you reflect on what they've told us in discussions over the course of the last several years, they're calling for goals that we agree with, and in fact, we are advancing as aggressively as possible. They want us to be bold. We have an affordable housing plan that is arguably the most aggressive affordable housing plan in the country. They want us to do our work faster. We are preserving and creating units at a faster clip than we ever have. They want us to do more deeply affordable units. A third of the homes that have been preserved and created over the course of the plan are affordable to families who are extremely low or very low income, which is approximately 26,000 and 43,000 respectively. They want us to do more senior housing. We've produced almost 5,000 units of senior housing as it relates to the plan, and they want us to build more on NYCHA land, and certainly my colleague can talk about that. We are already doing that. And so while we might disagree about the specifics or some of the specific tactics or details, we share a lot of the same goals, and we have been and continue to be open to finding ways where our work can be as effective as possible to serve New Yorkers across the city.
Okay. The plan that was put forward includes, I think it was 15,000 was the number of units that they think can and should be built, pitched almost exclusively, I guess, for senior citizens on vacant, well, not vacant, but parking lots and other portions of NYCHA developments.
Right,
what do you think of that?
Look, I would say we agree with the goal of this city is experiencing an affordable housing crisis. That is why the mayor put forward his housing plan. That is why of the 200,000 units that will be built or preserved, 10,000 of those units will be built throughout the NYCHA portfolio. So there is no disagreement on that fact. In reality, we have 9 sites that are currently out for development, 2 of which are senior. The first 2 were senior housing. So, we have both responded as a city to, I think, this very real crisis that we're experiencing, but also to the changing demographics of our city, needing to respond to folks who are 62 years or older. And for the Housing Authority, our job is preserving the city's existing affordable housing stock, which is 176,000 units of housing throughout the city, of which our plan, Next Generation NYCHA, is expressly designed to do.
I mean, that struck me as one of the first issues, right? Is that if you're going to build something new in a NYCHA development where there's both an existing waiting list and probably an existing backlog of repairs that people are waiting on, the immediate question becomes, how are you going to build something new when you haven't fixed, the elevator in my building?
Well, it's a real question of, how do we do that when we start from a place of a $17 billion capital need, Errol? And you've reported, reported about this here on this show. So, there is certainly now, there is no ferry in Washington. And while we will absolutely continue to not let Washington off the hook, we have got to explore every single tool at our disposal to raise the much needed revenue to fix that elevator. So our proposition has been, let's build affordable housing to meet the current affordable housing crisis, but let's also raise some much needed revenue for this cash-strapped agency, which is not going to change. Look, I wake up every day, as do the 11,000 men and women who work for the Housing Authority, thinking about how to make the quality of life for our residents better. I cannot do that without sufficient resources. There are several ways that we can can take advantage of, and development is one of those tools. It is an opportunity for us to not only meet affordable housing needs, better integrate our neighborhoods to the increasing regeneration that's happening around the city, but also for our residents to take some advantage of that by using those resources and investing it back in NYCHA.
No, Commissioner, I'm going to ask you something. You said that about 30% of the units that have been built or preserved so far under the housing plan were for very low income. I mean, you gave some numbers. For the critics of the plan, including the friendly critics, what they're saying is what that means is 70% are, as they would define it, not affordable. Meaning the definition that I've seen emerge in various city council districts and in various fights that I know you're on the other side of in a lot of these neighborhoods is that the notion is that, look, the median income in that particular community board, wherever the development parcel in question might be located, that should be the only definition of affordability. And if it's even slightly higher than what people there on average can afford right now, then what you're really doing is fueling gentrification.
So what I'll say is, and we've certainly heard it across neighborhoods and on a daily basis, the question of affordable for whom comes up. And we have been, from the very beginning, deeply committed to getting to deeper levels of affordability. The mayor added $2 billion in the last capital budget to make sure that we are not just meeting targets, but really exceeding them as they've been laid out in a plan. But I think it's worthwhile to, instead of talking about 30% of AMI, 40% of AMI, to talk about the people who are in different categories of need. And so, for instance, a single parent working, making $15 an hour full time, that person, that household is actually above 30% of area median income. I don't think anyone can deny that that's a type of household that needs our help. The same is true for a household with two income earners, say both making minimum wage. Though that too is a family that is experiencing incredible anxiety and need. And then we have, further along in the income spectrum, the types of households, the types of families, maybe a firefighter married to a teacher, also feeling an existential threat about whether this city is a type of city that can continue to be theirs. So what we believe, of course, that extremely low and very low income families are particularly rent burdened, which is why we are doing more and are investing more. But we have to also meet the needs of different families across the income spectrum who are facing so much pressure. The other point that I'll make, because this goes to making sure that we're developing housing that is sustainable into the future, the building itself has to be financially sustainable. If it was just about the rents that extremely low income people are able to pay, those rents aren't going to cover basic costs of a building, utilities, the super salary, insurance. And so the mix of incomes allows the type of revenue stream, not just that is important to get the building constructed, but to make sure that it's a type of building that is healthy and sustainable into the future.
Is the principle in that case is that even if it's even if it's the very large, say, for-profit developer that's behind the project, each building should be able to sort of pay for itself? Is that the notion?
It has to be a model that can be scaled and a model that allows for that building to be healthy into the future. I also think it's important to recognize recognize that our support of extremely low and very low income families does not end with just the production programs. We're exceeding those targets, we're investing more, but this administration has made historic commitments to programs like legal services if you are facing eviction, the 2-year rent freeze for rent-regulated units, programs like SCREE and DREE that freeze rent for income-eligible seniors and people with disabilities. Those are the types of tools working together with our production programs that we think will start to really balance the equation in favor of the hardworking families of our city.
Okay, we've got more to talk about, more tools to discuss, and what's going on in Washington as well. We need to get into that. Right now, though, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about affordable housing crisis with this panel. And then later tonight, I'll introduce you to 3 Green Party candidates who are trying to make some waves in Brooklyn. We're back in a minute. We are back on the road to City Hall, and I'm joined once again by 2 leading housing officials from the de Blasio administration, Housing Commissioner Maria Torres-Springer and the Chair of the Public Housing Authority, Shola Olatoye. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what's happening with the plan to develop on NYCHA properties. I saw that in 2 cases that you've referred to tonight, that you said that you've closed on them. What exactly does that mean?
So, as part of affordable housing production in this city, we work very closely with our colleagues at HPD, and there are many financial sources that are needed to make these projects work. To my colleague's point, making them sustainable for the future. So there's lots of different city subsidy to bring the cost of those of construction and of ultimately operating those buildings down. So we have closed, meaning our developer partners, nonprofit partners and for-profit partners have secured all of the financing commitments that they need in order to proceed with construction in those projects. The first 2 are senior housing, 100% affordable developments.
And that's Wyckoff?
Millbrook and Ingersoll in downtown Brooklyn. Those are 100% affordable developments. And as you know, as I said, we have 9 sites that are out there, those being 2. We have several other 100% affordable deals out there. We also have our Nextgen neighborhood sites, which are both creating more affordable housing and creating some market rate housing so that we can raise some revenue for the authority and the actual capital needs of the development where the construction
and that's the key thing, right? Is that it's not just to further the mission, it's also to sort of bring revenue in, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And for example, one of our projects, Homes Project, they have a $47 million capital need. I don't have that money. And so the ability to be able to tell residents who have not had new appliances, windows, or a working elevator for 20 years that we can actually do that with the closing of a new building, that the work will progress at the same time of the new construction, that there will be community facilities provided to not only the NYCHA residents, but the community at large, that there will be new lighting and that is a big deal. And it's a future that I alone cannot address.
I want to talk a little bit about what's happening out of Washington. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is vital for public housing here and everywhere else in the country. We have a new regional director, Lynne Patton, does not have a housing background, and you've extended some publicly, in fact, I think on the program, invitations to her to come and visit NYCHA Housing. Has she made a visit?
Not directly per my invitation. I don't believe she has, but I know that I have met with Administrator Patton, and look, I think the most important thing for that job is for he or she to be the leading advocate for resources in this region, and I think she understands that. We have laid out for her the challenges that the Housing Authority faces. Again, the $17 billion need that we have today in order to keep these apartments apartments open and available to New York's working people. She has that in front of her, and we look forward to welcoming her to a visit at her convenience.
Okay. Now, I mean, the first version of a Trump budget, I think, called for $1.8 billion to be cut from public housing nationally.
That's right.
Is she prepared to push back against that?
We absolutely have shared with her our concerns about that and what it would mean in terms of, fewer new boilers, fewer new elevators, a longer repair wait time. And so, we absolutely have provided her the facts about what the impact of such a budget would be on the 1 in 14 New Yorkers who rely on us. And we would hope that that would inform her advocacy in New York, in DC and beyond.
And let me just add to that HUD also, and the federal government, for instance, with my operating budget at HPD, while there's unprecedented city capital provided by the city with the mayor's leadership, on the operating side, 85% of my budget, the money that we use to do building inspections, emergency repairs, housing litigation, to fund Section 8 vouchers, that comes from the federal government. And those are under attack. There's some good news in that there has been bipartisan support because these are the types of funds that are used across the country. But it's really the type of fight that we have to continue to fight every day to make sure that Washington doesn't walk away from its obligations to our city and its residents.
So it's a budget fight every year, is my understanding, on, say, Section 8 housing, right? Congress just appropriates money for it, and one year it's one number, and the next year it might be a much lower or higher number. Right. Are you and your counterparts in other cities kind of working together to make this argument?
What's been heartening in the course of the last several months, as many municipalities across the city are facing these threats, is that there's a real reckoning that the affordable housing crisis, it is a national issue, it is a red state, blue state, purple state issue. In no state in this country can a person making the federal minimum wage full-time afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent.
Wow.
I think that's a staggering statistic for me.
No region,
no state,
urban,
nowhere,
rural, nowhere.
Wow. And so what that has meant, which I think is the good news, is that there's a lot of coalition building to protect the programs and the funding sources that enable what we do on a local level, and to fight for the types of investments and the types of changes we need to see, or programs that need to be preserved on the tax reform side, because the work of building affordable housing relies on braiding so many different funding sources, and we need to preserve each and every one of them. We need to expand each and every one of them, and continue to be as vigilant as possible in what is, of course, an environment where there are so many threats. But we need to keep housing at the top of the list, because it is so vital, not just to the well-being of families, but to the well-being of entire neighborhoods and cities.
And I would just add, I think, for public housing, there are 3,200 public housing authorities across the country. And for NYCHA, we run the country's largest Section 8 program. 90,000 households rely on us for rental assistance every month. And so we've worked with and begun work with our colleagues across the country, as my colleague said, purple, red, blue states, who said, this is, our senior housing, this is our VW, our VW volunteers who can no longer afford to, who may no longer be able to afford where they live because of a potential cut to these programs. So I think that this has also really created a moment in time for not just public housing authorities, but for housing agencies across the spectrum to come together and say, these resources are vital, not just because of the moral imperative that they serve, but for the economic impact that they have to our communities and to our cities and to our regions across the country.
Okay, that is going to be the last word. We will be watching along with you and everybody else to find out what's going to happen out of Washington and what's going to happen with these various programs that are right here. Thank you so much for shedding some light on what is probably, in my opinion, maybe the #1 issue that I hear about from people in this city, day in and day out.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'll speak with 3 Green Party candidates for City Council who are trying to get their message out in Brooklyn. We're back in a minute.